Ah, there you are. I was expecting you. Let us begin.
Amongst the ageless grey world, where dragons ruled over a land of arc trees and mists, there was a spark, hidden away deep within the bowels of the world. That spark became a flame, the first flame. From it came life and death, light, dark, heat and cold. Though the world has changed much since the discovery of this magical fire, one thing has remained constant. The flame burns, as it always has, and as it must continue to do in order to preserve the age of fire and prevent the coming of the dark. Gwyn discovered the first flame, and so it was apt that he became the first to link the flame, the process of feeding one's very soul and essence to the flame as kindling. Similar to the rite of kindling performed by the clerics on the bonfires of the land, whereby humanity is fed to the fire to empower their flames, this mighty blaze can only be stoked by the mightiest of souls. Once Gwyn became aware of the fading of the flame, he and his fellow lords set to work, attempting to find a way to prevent this and prolong their age of glory. The Witch of Izalith attempted to create a new flame, but instead birthed the flame of chaos and the race of demons, destroying her home and ravaging herself and her daughters in the process. The resulting war heavily depleted Gwyn's army, with many of his famous silver knights perishing in battle, and the survivors returning changed, their arms and armour charred black by demonic flames. The four kings had fallen to darkness, and as such had no interest in perpetuating the age of flame, for their master Karth sought the very opposite, the age of dark. The Gravelord Nito was probably the most affected by the waning of the flame, for his very sphere of power revolved around death, a notion discovered within the first flame itself. Should the flames die, he could well be left entirely powerless. Unfortunately for Nito, he did not realise that even perpetuating the Age of Fire would erode his strength, for the undead curse would be born, and with it, the very dead were stolen from his grasp. Seath the Scaleless had little need for flames, for he had his crystal, and with it, immortality. He instead spent his time experimenting upon the humans captured by his channelers. And so it was that Gwyn had little choice. He knew what had to be done, and so he descended to the depths of Lordran, to the Kiln where the first flame still resides to this day. He took with him a handful of his newly dubbed Black Knights, the survivors of the war against Izalith. Together, they travelled to the Firelink Altar, and down into the Kiln itself. It is said that their very spirits can still be seen wandering this place, bravely facing their duty. The Kiln is a large circular area housed by a large stone wall that almost seems to exist outside of reality. The land is coated in thick layers of ash, covering the area in grey dunes, and the sky is a murky, yellowy black colour. There is but a solitary structure in this apparent wasteland, a large arena-like tower that encapsulates the centre of the kiln, the housing for the flame itself. Made primarily of stone, it appears that this crumbling ruin has been maintained over time, and there is evidence of what appears to be dragon bone used in places to reinforce the crumbling pillars. It is likely this place was the site of a great battle in ancient times, and the bones that restored this place were taken from the losers of this battle. The dragons may have even been eradicated here before the very flame that caused their downfall. Pressing onwards towards the central structure, we find that it consists largely of a central tower with a staircase running downwards towards the kiln proper. It appears that this building was once much grander, but time has ravaged it no less than the rest of Lordran. It would appear that even the very stone has melted and fused together, blocking off large portions of the kiln and leaving but a single path, the path to the flame. But for any who would travel this far, be they the one to link the flame and extend the age of fire, or the Dark Lord come to take his throne, there is one final test to prove their worth. It is unknown when Gwyn descended here and linked the flame whether there was a champion he had to overcome, but in linking the flame, he became the new champion of Ash. The Lord of Sunlight became the Lord of Cinders, his very soul becoming kindling for the burning flame and the extending of the age. But Gwyn had given up much of his power in his days, splitting his lord's soul amongst his subjects Seath and the Four Kings, and as such, his solution was a temporary one. 1,000 years of light, and once more the flame would fade. And for 1,000 years, Gwyn waited, a shell of his former self, his sole purpose to mantle the flame and await the coming of the next champion. And so it is that though the world above may shift, morph and change, kingdoms may rise and fall, men live and die, but through it all, beneath it all, the flame shall flicker, and the kiln will endure, waiting for the next hero to kindle the flame.
Ah, very well. There is nothing left for me to teach you. Our time together is done. It was short, but sweet.